Hey, what's up guys? Welcome to the Swanky Cat Productions channel. My name is Ben. This is my 2021 Tenere 700. Over here we've got my 2022 Gen 3 KLR 650. And after riding both of these bikes in some pretty intense terrain over the past year, I think I'm ready to tell you exactly why I think you should buy the Tenere 700 over the KLR 650. For those of you that clicked on this because you own a KLR 650 and are a diehard fanboy and are just going to get upset no matter what I say about the Tenere 700 and can't quite wrap your head around the fact that there may be a better bike out there than the KLR 650, I am sorry, but this video is not for you. Please hit the dislike button and close your browser. For everybody else though, I think I have kind of come to a realization that there are some things that are very specific about the Tenere 700 that are better than the KLR, that you almost kind of have to go right from one bike to the other and then maybe back again to fully understand and fully appreciate. Obviously, there are some things that are blatantly obvious about this bike that are better than the KLR. And maybe vice versa as well. But I think that's more than enough foreshadowing for now, so let's get right into it. The first thing that I like better about the Tenere 700 is the looks. Now, don't get me wrong, the Gen 3 KLR 650 has definitely been upgraded compared to the looks of the Gen 2. I had my Gen 2 fixed up pretty well, and I guess maybe I should have mentioned that earlier. I am a previous KLR 650 owner. I owned a Gen 2 for quite a few years. I would definitely take the new Gen 3 over the Gen 2 just because of the looks. It looks a lot more like an adventure bike should. It is much more attractive. You might even say that it's a little bit sexy. But it still just can't quite compete with the looks of the Tenere 700, at least in my opinion. Maybe you have a different one, feel free to let me know. There is just something about this bike that just makes it look cool. It's like a badass dirt bike mixed with a sport bike, and I have just always wanted exactly that, and that is exactly what Yamaha delivered with both the looks and the feel of this bike, which we'll get into. The second thing that I like better about the Tenere 700 has got to be the engine. The sound that this thing puts out is absolutely beautiful. I've got the Camel ADV high exhaust kit on this, which I would definitely recommend. You need to do something about that horrible exhaust design before you snap it off. To do more research on why it is that you need to replace that or amend that in one way or another, you can just Google Tenere 700 exhaust issues. And I do have a Lex pipe on the KLR 650. The third thing is also, I would say, pretty motor related, and that is the power and the way that this bike delivers its power. And that's one of the things that my dad and I noticed when we were riding both of these bikes on the single track. The KLR 650 does not have an ECU tune. I do have the Lex pipe on it, and I do have a uni air filter in it, but I do not have it desnorkeled, and there is not a reflash available yet for the ECU. The Tenere 700 does have uni air filter, it does have a different intake boot, it does have the Camel ADV high exhaust kit, which is basically just a straight through pipe, and it does also have the ECU reflashed by Two Wheel Dynaworks. So obviously you have to take some of that into consideration, but I don't think even after I reflash this and desnorkel it, it's going to be anywhere near what the Tenere 700 does. Between the engine and between the anti-squat rear, this thing is so much more responsive in the sense that you can twist the throttle, turn the bars, and the bike will just go exactly where you point it to. The KLR 650, there's just a split second where you kind of have a little bit of lag time before it actually kicks in and goes anywhere and starts to spin the rear tire, which obviously doesn't spin quite as easy. On this bike, it's super easy. It would make a beginner look good. This bike, I tried to do the exact same maneuvers that I was doing on this one, and I almost put it into a tree. Not to say that somebody who has much more skills than I do, or maybe even the same skill set that I do, just with a little bit more ride time and a little bit more practice, couldn't do the exact same things on the KLR 650 that you could on the Tenere 700, but it's a lot easier on this bike, and it's a lot more fun. And of course, being a parallel twin, this motor is so much smoother than the KLR 650. You do get a little bit of buzzing at like 5,500 RPM, but this motor is so much more like a sport bike out on the road, not only in the smoothness, but also in the power. I mean, you crack the throttle in this thing and it will pull the front end up so easy. The KLR 650, you've got to work pretty hard to make it do that. And as much as people say that the KLR 650 is a bargain bike, I have to say the Tenere 700 is way more of a bargain if you're somebody that wants to enjoy the corners, ride fast, have a powerful bike on the road, and then be able to go right from the road to a trail and enjoy it just as much, if not more, on the trail. This bike just can absolutely do it all. and it does it very, very, very well. The next thing my dad and I noticed while we were out on those 2 rides is that this bike is a lot more comfortable to stand on. Now, it does have a pretty straight bar to begin with from the factory. I actually bought a different bar. I've got the Tusk Fat bar in the YZ High Bend, and that does bring the bars a little bit further in, meaning the sweep is a little bit more, and I have to say that that has definitely improved the ergonomic comfort of the bike, but it has not taken away from the aggressive off-road feel. The Tenere 700, just in general, the way the bars are located and the straightness of the bar just feels a lot more aggressive, and it feels a lot more comfortable. The other thing that I've noticed about this bike is that the foot pegs actually feel a lot better, and I've got the stock pegs on here. I've got aftermarket pegs on the KLR 650. I also have the JNS lowering non-dampened foot peg brackets on there. I'm not exactly sure what it is, but these feel a lot more sturdy, and they feel maybe a little bit further out. I definitely feel a lot more comfortable standing on the pegs on this bike than I do that one, even though the JNS lowering non-dampened brackets and the off-road pegs that I've got on here were a huge improvement over the stock garbage. And I will actually be switching out the bars on the KLR 650 for something that should be quite a bit more aggressive. So that's going to bring the bars up quite a bit, and it should also kind of reduce some of the sweep. Hopefully it should still be pretty comfortable, but should feel a little bit closer to what the Tenere 700 feels like when you're off-road and standing up. I don't think it's going to be quite as stretched out, but I think it should get me into a position that is maybe a little bit closer to how the Tenere 700 feels. And if you want to make sure you see that video, make sure you click that subscribe button. I do put a video out like this at least once a week. Now, the fifth thing is really going to upset any fanboys that stuck around to get a little bit triggered today. So the fifth thing is going to be the fact that the Tenere 700 is so much more of a reliable, solid machine that you just don't have to do anything with. The maintenance on this bike is incredibly low. The KLR 650 is absolutely 100% bulletproof if you do the Thermobob mod, if you replace the doohickey, or if you adjust the doohickey during every oil change. What else do you have to do? I guess on the Gen 2 you had to do the subframe bolts. I mean, it's just an extremely low maintenance bike that you don't have to touch until, what is it, 12 or 13,000 miles, where you need to pull the valve cover off and reshim the valves if they're out of whack, which they probably are. I mean, it's so low maintenance. Where the Tenere 700 over here is extremely high maintenance. At 24,000 miles, you need to check the valves. And that's it. The sixth thing is something that you probably won't notice unless you ride the bike really hard off-road, and that is the suspension. The KLR 650 has one adjustment, and that is the preload on the rear spring. Basically, that's just there to set the sag. The sag is supposed to be 25 to 35% of essentially how much that suspension can be compressed. So you want to set that to your weight, basically get whatever that dimension is reduced by 25 to 30% when you sit on the bike. And speaking of that, I guess you do have one more adjustment, and that is the rebound damping. That's essentially just there so you can modulate that depending on where you have the preload set, and that basically just changes how fast the spring can be expanded. The Tenere 700 has all that and more. It also has compression damping on the rear spring, and you also have compression and rebound damping on the front. And not only does this bike have more adjustments, but the suspension itself just feels much more set up for hard enduro type riding. If you're not going to do any of that stuff, it's maybe not something you're going to notice, but the KLR 650 definitely feels under-equipped and a bit bouncy. Now, I know you can stick a bunch of money into it to upgrade the suspension, but honestly, the $3,000 difference between these two bikes kind of gets a little bit closer if you're gonna stick $1,500 in suspension components into the bike. And really, out of the box, this bike is not perfect, but it definitely does a darn good job for everything that I throw at it. So in conclusion, if you're somebody that is going to ride hard and wants to ride fast, I think the Tenere 700 is definitely going to be more than worth the cost that you pay over the Gen 3 KLR 650. This bike is a great substitute, and it's something that I think you can definitely enjoy. But I think there's a lot of people out there that are really going to appreciate what the T7 will give you over the Gen 3 KLR 650, and I think there are a lot of people that buy this bike and assume that it's going to do everything that the Tenere 700 can do,
And like I've explained tonight, that is just not the case. This bike just feels so much more responsive, feels so much more planted, and it's just so much more fun to ride through the rough stuff. And out on the road too. I guess I really haven't hit that much, but this bike is obviously a lot more enjoyable out on the road. Not that you can't have a lot of fun cruising on the KLR 650. So thanks for watching, guys. Hopefully this video was helpful to you. If it was, make sure you hit that like button. Let me know down in the comment box below if you have any of your own ideas about which one of these bikes is better for you and why. Other than that, guys, take care, stay safe, stay swanky, get out, enjoy this beautiful world any chance you get. And if you can't, here's some more videos to check out in the meantime.